You are a programmer. You're about to go to a conference in your field and you don't do that very often. It's a special occasion. How can you get the greatest benefit from this unique opportunity? There isn't a single correct answer, actually. It all depends on what you want to get out of it. Find new collaborators, make new friends, meet someone famous, become famous yourself, get a job offer at a better company, get a book deal maybe. What would you want to get out of going to a conference? Maybe you should all drop that in the comments. If you have a specific goal, it would be much easier for me to give you specific advice and much easier for you to optimize for that specific outcome. So I would say start by running the event in your brain the way you would ideally like it to happen. Imagine you're there. You're among the people who are likely to be there. Let's pretend you're a Ruby on Rails programmer and this is a big Ruby on Rails conference. So presumably you will have a list of the speakers. Well, is David Heinemeier Hansen, the creator of Ruby on Rails, going to be there? Would you like to hang out with him, for example? And why exactly? What for? Do you think he would want to hang out with you? See things from his perspective. If you think he wouldn't, could you change that? Do you have anything in common? Look him up. Research his interests. I see on his Wikipedia page that he races cars. Do you have any interest in that? I don't, for example. He runs a company. Do you, or would you want to? Well, I do. He invests in startups. Well, do you do any of these things? And also, which of these things matter most to him? Which one does he list first on his own web page, as opposed to, what people have written about him on the Wikipedia page? For example, he says he's a best-selling author. Well, have you read any of his books? If not, and you want to meet him, why not? Well, if yes, which one did you like the best? Why? Why don't you bring it up to the conference and ask him to autograph it for you? He'll certainly say yes, and that will be some kind of icebreaker. And then, if you tell him specifically about the parts of the book that got you excited and exactly why they got you excited, then you can start a conversation. Maybe, queue with him at the cafeteria and end up sitting next to him and continue to chat over lunch and so forth. If it's interesting to both of you, it will happen. When the situation is asymmetric, like, a famous person meets one of his million fans, then by default, the famous person will give the fan just 1/1,000,000th of his time, right? Unless you are somehow more interesting than the average fan. So put yourself in your shoes and think, what would make me, as the famous person, want to spend more time with this particular fan of mine instead of any of the others? And I would enjoy that. What would make me enjoy that? And what instead would make me cringe and want to dump this fan as soon as possible? And then plan accordingly, okay? Now, if you are instead in a, let's say, more symmetric setting where you don't want to meet a super famous person, or you just want to meet with other programmers which are more or less at your level, then some of the tactics will be different, but the general strategy still applies. Put yourself in their shoes. If you were them, would they like to hang out with you? Why? Who would be interesting and pleasant for you to meet, and how can you become that for them? If you don't already know who they are, of course you can't look them up online, but if they are similar to you, then you can guess some of the things about them and their interests and so on, and you will be right at least some of the time. It's a bit like going fishing, right? You won't get a fish every time you cast your fishing pole. Much of the time you'll get nothing. But keep at it. Don't be shy about talking to new people, especially if you're a bit introverted like many computer geeks actually are. At some point, you will find someone you naturally click with, especially if it's an environment of people like you, okay? The point is not to go with an attitude of how can I get the most out of these people I'm going to meet, but rather with an attitude of how can I offer the most to these unknown people? How can I be most helpful, most interesting, most valuable from their viewpoint? How can I make them want to ask for my business card at the end of the day because they want to keep in touch with me, because they enjoyed interacting with me? That's the best recipe I can give you for getting the most out of these interactions and networking connections yourself. And of course, if you're going to do that, then do prepare a stack of business cards before you go to the conference. I mean, perhaps this advice is getting obsolete in most of the world, but I still do all the time, and it's still a must if you expect to meet Japanese people at your conference. Okay, Japanese are big on business cards, meishi. Now, for anywhere else in the world, at least if you don't have business cards, have an up-to-date homepage on your website if you want people to look you up and connect with you and be able to, figure out what you've done and all that kind of stuff. Have an up-to-date curriculum ready if you hope to get any job offers. Have a well-honed book proposal prepared before you leave home if you plan on getting a book deal. You get my drift. You'll never get the outcome you want unless you know what it is you actually want and you make it easy for that outcome to happen. always be prepared. And best wishes.